I think Mr. Poilievre needs to look at himself in the mirror. He, as the opposition leader, has been talking a lot, but with no action. Never did we hear him that we should get to 3.5% of the. Never did we hear from him neither. Never did we hear him about also everything that is linked to our. I could go on and on and on, but I think we have not a lot of time for this interview.
Oh, Melanie, you try so hard to sound smart, but you're just a complete moron. Never did we hear this, never did we hear that. Maybe the carney will Yeah, you got nothing. I mean, Poilievre only promised to take on Trump, reduce crime, eliminate government overreach, bring our jobs back home, deport criminals, stem the fentanyl crisis. You know, things that Canadians actually want. You idiot liberals have spent more time in foreign countries than on Canadian soil. All under the guise of trying to build a stronger Canadian economy? Yeah, right. Hello to my 315 friends and fellow patriots. Today, we're gonna listen to some delicious word salad from the ever-eloquent Melanie Joly. What is her purpose exactly? I'm not even sure that she knows, to be honest, because by the sounds of her, she has the intelligence of a toddler. You know what I think is that Mark Carney put her on as industry minister because she's so stupid that she confuses everyone around her, which serves as a distraction for Mark Carney while he's out shopping Canada to Europe like we're on clearance sale. Subscribe, like, comment, share, yada yada yada. Let's get into it.
Where do things stand with the Americans? How close are we to a deal on these tariffs?
So I know this is a question that every single journalist across the country want to ask the government. But what I can tell you is we'll let the negotiating team do its work. And that's why Minister LeBlanc was in Washington this week. That's why also the Prime Minister had a constructive conversation also with the president yesterday. What I can tell you, though, is meanwhile, we are really targeting the most affected sectors, those that have been really under tariffs for too long, and those that a lot of people are extremely preoccupied, to say the least, because a lot of livelihoods are at stake. And my job in the context of this negotiation is to be able to work on the consequences of these trade tensions and to make sure that people in the steel, aluminum, auto sectors, copper, and lumber sectors also being taken care of.
When this trade war first broke out, you were a proponent of what you called maximum pressure on the U.S. to make them pay. Now Canada is lifting some of these retaliatory tariffs, as you know. The government is actually alleviating some of the pressure on the U.S. Why is that the right approach right now?
Well, because I think the Prime Minister had a constructive conversation with the President, and in this context, I think it is important that we follow his lead. I think also that we have indeed a good positioning because I think of a lot of things we've done, including countermeasures. I think it was really effective at the time. I think also we need to make sure that meanwhile, we not become completely over-reliant on the US. And that is why I'm in Germany right now, in Europe, as I'm working on making sure that we're helping businesses pivot and try to become closer to European businesses and also to European governments.
Speaking of the steel sector, they're not really happy with this government right now, as you probably know. The Canadian Steel Producers Association is calling the decision to drop the retaliatory tariffs a disappointment. They say reciprocal tariffs protect Canadian industries and workers in this trade war, and that dropping them makes us weaker. What's your message to those who are feeling dejected by this move in the steel industry?
Well, I really think that we're keeping the counter tariffs that are linked to steel and to aluminum. And we're concentrating our efforts to fight for the very people that are in the steel sector, that are in the aluminum sector, that are in the auto sector, to make sure that we get to a better deal for them. Because I know I've heard their anxieties. I know that we need to do a lot of work to make sure that we're able to keep these steel plants operating and keeping the jobs. And that's why I was at Algoma Steel in Sault Ste. Marie this summer. That's also why I was at Dofasco, so ArcelorMittal in Hamilton, a couple of weeks ago. And that's why also we came up with $1 billion plan to support the steel workers and the steel businesses.
I don't think it's just the media that wants to know what's happening with the tariffs there, Mel. The entire Canadian public is concerned at the moment. And how can you say that the negotiating team is doing their job and you can't provide details, but then claim the discussions are productive? Maybe provide an example of how productive they are, instead of just offering blanket statements that lack any substance. And when you say that we should follow Mark Carney's lead, that's like the blind leading the blind. Exactly where has that gotten every Canadian so far? Well, that's easy. Miserable, poorer, and weaker.
We heard from Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, who has been, maybe not a huge surprise, but a bit critical of what's been signed over the last few days with the Prime Minister in particular. And he says that the one deal with Germany on critical minerals is a phony declaration that is unenforceable with no money attached, and he's coming home with nothing of consequence. What's your defense of the government's agenda over there in Europe? What do you say to Mr. Poilievre?
I think Mr. Poilievre needs to look at himself in the mirror. When he's describing what you just said, I think he's talking about his own policy.
Why do you say that?
Because ultimately, he, as the opposition leader, has been talking a lot, but with no action. Never did we hear him that we should get to 3.5% of defense budget. Never did we hear him talking about the fact that our armed forces should get a pay raise in order to recruit better and to make sure that we could support our strong men and women. Never did we hear that we should increase defense procurement to make sure that we build more in Canada. Never did we hear from him neither the fact that ultimately we need to be less reliant on the US to become closer to Europe, and that's exactly what we are doing. And never did we hear him about also everything that is linked to our airspace sector and F-35s. So I could go on and on and on, but I think we have not a lot of time for this interview.
This is the consequence of electing a man who has jello for a backbone. So I hope you all take confidence in knowing that the Liberals of our country will continue to do whatever it takes to ensure that we all stay impoverished. So when you go to the grocery store today and have to put items back on the shelf, thank a Liberal. When you're barely able to fuel your car, thank a Liberal. When you don't get a call back from a job interview, thank a Liberal. If you get mugged or carjacked, thank a Liberal. How about this? If anything bad happens to you from now on, just thank a Liberal.